Close your eyes, not because you are tired, but because the old version of you has lived long enough. Breathe slow, deep, because the moment you change your breath, you change your chemistry. And the moment you change your chemistry, you change your future. July is not just another month. July is a threshold, a biological reset, a spiritual intervention. Right now, your heart is listening, not to your words, but to your habits, not to your intentions, but to your patterns. And here's the truth. No one told us growing up. Heart disease does not begin in the heart. It begins in the unconscious mind. It begins in repetition, in food eaten without awareness, in stress carried as identity, especially for South Asians. Generations of survival mode, generations of sugar as comfort, oil as love, overeating as success, and stress as normal. Heart disease is not fate, it is feedback, and this truth alone has the power to shatter generations of fear, because fate implies something written without consent, something sealed before you were born, something you must accept and endure. But feedback is alive, responsive, intelligent, and always changing. Feedback means the body is speaking to you in real time, not punishing you but guiding you, not betraying you but protecting you. And the heart, more than any other organ, is a messenger of your internal world, responding moment by moment to how you think, how you feel, how you eat, how you rest, and how you live. Heart disease does not suddenly appear one day like an enemy at the door. It builds quietly through years of ignored signals, elevated stress chemistry, repeated unconscious choices, and emotional patterns that were never meant to become permanent. And when we call this fate, we give away our power. But when we call it feedback, we reclaim authorship of our future. The heart tightens when life feels unsafe, arteries harden when the nervous system never relaxes, blood pressure rises when the body believes it must constantly push against resistance, and cholesterol accumulates when the system is stuck in long-term survival mode. All of these are not moral failures or genetic curses, but adaptive responses that stayed active too long. Your body evolved to protect you from short-term danger, not to live for decades in fight or flight, not to digest heavy food under emotional stress, not to store inflammation as a daily state. And when these conditions become normal, the heart adjusts accordingly, not because it wants to fail, but because it is trying to help you survive the life you are unconsciously rehearsing. For many people, especially those from high-risk backgrounds, the story of heart disease has been framed as inevitable, inherited, unavoidable, and this belief alone becomes a biological command. Because the body listens to identity more than advice. It responds to expectation more than hope. And when someone believes they are doomed, the nervous system prepares for loss before it ever arrives. But feedback means that every symptom is an invitation to change direction, every lab number is a checkpoint, every sensation is a message asking for attention, and the moment you interpret these signals differently, the body begins to reorganize itself around a new meaning. Stress is not just an emotion, it is a chemical state, and chronic stress tells the heart to beat harder, faster, and less efficiently. It tells blood vessels to constrict, it tells the immune system to stay alert, and it tells digestion to slow down. And when this state becomes your personality, your schedule, and your self-image, the heart adapts to that pressure as best as it can until it no longer can. Feedback also means reversibility, because what was learned can be unlearned, what was conditioned can be reconditioned, and what was created by repetition can be transformed by new repetition. Not overnight, not by force, but by coherence and consistency. The heart responds immediately to changes in breath, posture, emotion, and perception, and studies have shown that a calm, regulated nervous system improves heart rhythm, blood flow, and vascular flexibility. But even without studies, the body already knows this, because you can feel it when your chest softens, when your breath deepens, when relief replaces urgency. When someone hears that heart disease runs in their family, they often hear a sentence that sounds like a life sentence. But genes are not dictators, they are listeners, responding to the environment you create internally and externally. And feedback means that your daily choices speak louder than your ancestry. Food eaten in stress becomes a different signal than the same food eaten in peace. Rest after eating sends a different message than rushing. Gratitude changes heart rhythm faster than willpower. And awareness alone begins to dissolve the unconscious loops that created imbalance in the first place. The heart does not break because of one meal, 1 year, or one mistake. It shifts slowly in response to thousands of micro messages, and that is the most hopeful truth of all, because it means that thousands of new messages can also restore it. When you stop seeing symptoms as enemies and start seeing them as indicators, shame dissolves and responsibility returns. Not the heavy responsibility of blame, but the light responsibility of choice. The recognition that you are not broken, you are responding, and responses can be updated. The body never asks for perfection, it asks fasts for safety, rhythm, and presence, and when these are restored, the heart does what it has always known how to do: adapt, balance, and heal. Calling heart disease fate freezes the future, but calling it feedback opens a conversation. And once the conversation begins, the body listens, adjusts, and moves toward coherence, because health is not something you earn, it is something you allow by no longer ignoring the intelligence that has been guiding you all along. Fasting is not deprivation, it is intelligence remembering itself. And the moment you stop seeing fasting as punishment, the body stops resisting and starts cooperating, because the human system was never designed for constant intake, constant digestion, constant insulin release, constant inflammation. It was designed for rhythm, for cycles of feast and rest, action and repair. And when that rhythm is restored, the body does what no drug can force it to do. It heals from the inside out. Every time you fast, even briefly, you send a powerful signal to your cells that says there is no emergency, no scarcity, no threat. And this signal is more important than calories, more important than macros, more important than rules, because safety is the master switch of healing. When the body feels safe, it shifts out of survival mode, inflammation quiets, insulin sensitivity improves, blood vessels soften, and the heart no longer has to work against constant internal resistance. Fasting gives the digestive system a break, and that break is not laziness, it is liberation, because digestion is one of the most energy-expensive processes in the body, and when it pauses, energy is redirected toward repair, cleanup, and renewal. Old damaged cells are recycled, metabolic waste is cleared, and the system becomes more efficient, not weaker. And this is why fasting has existed across cultures, religions, and civilizations long before modern science tried to rename it. Your ancestors fasted not because they lacked food, but because they understood timing, they understood restraint, they understood that wisdom lives in space as much as in substance. For high-risk bodies that have lived too long in constant feeding, constant sugar spikes, constant stress eating, fasting is not extreme, it is corrective, it is the reset button that modern life forgot how to press. When you eat all day, especially under emotional pressure, the heart never gets a break from metabolic chaos. Blood sugar rises and falls like a storm, insulin stays elevated, inflammation becomes background noise, and the heart adapts by thickening, stiffening, and working harder than it was ever meant to. Fasting interrupts that noise. It creates silence in the system, and in that silence, the body can finally hear itself again. Hunger during fasting is not danger, it is communication. It is the body switching fuel sources, learning flexibility, and breaking the addiction to constant stimulation. And once the mind stops panicking, the body stabilizes and clarity appears. Fasting teaches discipline without force, awareness without obsession, and respect for the body's natural intelligence. And this respect alone begins to dissolve years of unconscious abuse. When fasting is done with intention, not fear, cortisol does not spike, stress does not increase. Instead, the nervous system learns trust, and trust is the foundation of cardiovascular healing. A heart that trusts does not constrict unnecessarily. A vascular system that trusts remains elastic. A metabolism that trusts does not hoard energy as fat and inflammation. Fasting also breaks identity patterns, the belief that you must always be eating, always consuming, always filling a void. And when that belief dissolves, emotional eating loses its grip, because you realize you are not actually hungry for food, you are hungry for regulation, presence, and relief. Each fast becomes a conversation with the body, not a battle, a reminder that you are in charge of timing, not impulses, and this sense of agency changes brain chemistry in ways that directly affect the heart. When the brain perceives control, stress hormones decrease, heart rate variability improves, and coherence replaces chaos, and this is measurable. But more importantly, it is felt. Fasting is also humility, the acknowledgement that more is not always better, that constant abundance without awareness leads to disease, while intentional restraint leads to clarity. The heart responds to this humility by relaxing, by trusting that it no longer has to overcompensate for excess. For South Asian bodies conditioned by rich foods, frequent meals, and cultural pressure to overeat, fasting is not rejection of tradition, it is restoration of balance, because traditional wisdom always included fasting, seasonal eating, and respect for digestive fire. Modern habits removed the pauses and kept the indulgence, and the heart paid the price. Fasting reintroduces pause, and pause is where healing lives. During fasting, blood markers begin to shift, triglycerides lower, insulin drops, inflammatory signals reduce, but beyond numbers, something deeper happens. The body remembers resilience, flexibility, and efficiency, qualities that modern overfeeding erased. Fasting also sharpens awareness. You begin to notice how food affects you, how stress triggers cravings, how emotions rise and fall without being numbed. And this awareness is medicine, because unconscious patterns cannot survive in the light of observation. When fasting becomes a regular rhythm, not an emergency response, the heart stops bracing for constant metabolic assault and begins to beat with ease again, with rhythm instead of urgency. Fasting is not about control, it is about alignment. Alignment with circadian biology, hormonal intelligence, and evolutionary design. And alignment always reduces strain. A strained system ages quickly, an aligned system regenerates. Each fast is a signal to your future heart that you are no longer living in excess, no longer ignoring limits, no longer mistaking fullness for nourishment. And when the heart receives that signal consistently, it reorganizes structure, function, and flow, not through force, but through permission. Food is not entertainment, it is information. And the moment this truth lands in the nervous system, the body stops being confused, because confusion is created when pleasure is mistaken for nourishment and stimulation is mistaken for safety. Every single bite you take is a message delivered directly to your cells, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but chemically, electrically, and hormonally, and your body reads that message instantly and responds without judgment. When food is consumed unconsciously, rushed, emotional, or habitual, the message the body receives is chaos, unpredictability, and threat, and the heart responds by tightening, speeding up, and working harder to stabilize an unstable internal environment. The heart does not understand taste or tradition, it understands signals, and when those signals repeatedly say excess sugar, refined oil, processed starch, and late-night eating, the heart adapts the only way it knows how, by thickening vessels, altering rhythm, and preparing for long-term stress. When food is treated as entertainment, eating becomes disconnected from hunger, satiety, and biological need. And this disconnection forces the body to compensate constantly, a compensation that eventually becomes disease. Food eaten for distraction carries a different chemical signature than food eaten with presence, because stress hormones alter digestion, absorption, and inflammation, and this is why the same meal can either heal or harm depending on the state of the eater. The nervous system plays a central role in how food is processed, and when the nervous system is dysregulated, even healthy food can become a burden, while when the nervous system is calm, simple food becomes deeply nourishing. Processed food overwhelms the body with conflicting information, artificial flavors, refined sugars, and damaged fats, telling the system to store, defend, and inflame, while whole foods speak a language the body understands, minerals that stabilize nerves, fiber that calms blood sugar, antioxidants that repair tissue, and fats that support cellular membranes. Every time you choose real food, you are not just lowering calories, you are reducing internal noise, and reduced noise allows the heart to beat in coherence rather than chaos. South Asian diets, when modernized without restraint, often become a collision of ancient richness and modern processing. Heavy oils, refined grains, constant snacking, and sugar normalized as culture, and the heart is left to manage a metabolic environment it was never designed to endure daily. Traditional foods were once eaten seasonally, slowly, and in community, but modern life removed context and kept quantity, and the heart absorbed the consequences. Food timing matters as much as food quality, because eating late at night sends conflicting circadian signals, forcing the heart and metabolism to stay active when they should be repairing, and over time this disruption erodes cardiovascular resilience. When food is treated as information, choices become intentional, not restrictive. Because you are no longer asking what tastes good, you are asking what message you want to send to your future body. A meal rich in fiber, protein, and healthy fats tells the heart that stability is present, that blood sugar will rise gently, that inflammation is not required, and the heart relaxes into that message. Highly refined meals tell the heart to prepare for spikes, crashes, and emergency responses, and repeated emergencies age the cardiovascular system prematurely. Eating slowly changes hormonal signaling, giving the brain time to register fullness, reducing overeating, and lowering the metabolic burden placed on the heart. But speed has become normal, and normal has become harmful. When meals are rushed, digestion is incomplete, nutrients are poorly absorbed, and the heart compensates for this inefficiency by working harder to deliver oxygen and nutrients, a silent strain that accumulates over years. Emotional eating trains the body to associate stress with digestion, a pairing that keeps the heart in a constant state of alert, never fully resting, never fully recovering. When you eat in a calm state, parasympathetic activity increases, heart rate variability improves, and blood flow becomes more efficient. And this is not philosophy, it is physiology. Food also influences the microbiome, and the microbiome communicates directly with the heart through inflammatory pathways, neurotransmitters, and metabolic byproducts, meaning that what you eat shapes not only digestion, but cardiovascular risk at a deep level. Fiber-rich foods feed beneficial bacteria that reduce inflammation and support vascular health, while ultra-processed foods feed dysbiosis, increasing systemic inflammation and cardiovascular strain. When food becomes information, labels lose their emotional power, and awareness replaces guilt because you are no longer eating to escape feelings, you are eating to create coherence. This shift changes identity, and identity changes behavior effortlessly. The heart responds to consistency more than perfection, to patterns more than isolated meals, and when those patterns begin to stabilize, blood markers follow. But more importantly, energy returns, breath deepens, and the body feels safe again. Safety is the hidden nutrient missing from modern diets, and no amount of supplements can replace it. When the body feels safe, it digests efficiently, circulates effectively, and repairs continuously, and food becomes a partner in healing rather than a source of conflict. Every conscious meal is a vote for clarity, every intentional bite is a reduction in internal stress, and the heart listens to these votes more carefully than any doctor ever will. Identity is the most powerful medicine you will ever take or refuse because the body does not follow goals, it follows self-image, and whatever you repeatedly say you are becomes the instruction manual your biology obeys. The moment someone accepts the identity of high risk, genetically doomed, or chronically unhealthy, the nervous system reorganizes around vigilance, anticipation, and defense, and the heart begins to beat as if danger is always near. This is not imagination, it is physiology, because identity determines perception, perception determines emotional chemistry, and emotional chemistry determines hormonal output, inflammation, blood pressure, and heart rhythm. When you wake up believing your heart is weak, your body prepares for fragility. When you live believing disease is inevitable, your cells brace for decline. And when you constantly repeat the story of family illness, your genes listen and respond, not as destiny, but as instructions. Genes are not fixed commands carved in stone, they are switches waiting for signals, and identity is one of the loudest signals the body ever receives. Epigenetics proves that genes express differently based on environment, stress, nutrition, and emotional state, but the internal environment created by belief is often stronger than the external one. When someone identifies as stressed, busy, overworked, and unlucky with health, the stress response becomes chronic, cortisol remains elevated, blood vessels lose elasticity, and the heart adapts to constant pressure. But when identity shifts, when someone begins to see themselves as capable of healing, resilient, and in control of their rhythms, the nervous system softens. And softness is not weakness, it is repair. A relaxed system repairs faster than a tense one, and identity is what allows relaxation to feel safe. Many people try to change habits without changing identity, and this is why change feels exhausting, because behavior that contradicts identity requires force, and force always creates resistance. When identity changes first, behavior follows naturally, effortlessly, and consistently, because the body is no longer being dragged into health, it is moving toward alignment. The heart responds to coherence, and coherence begins when thoughts, emotions, and actions stop contradicting each other. If you eat healthy but believe you are broken, the stress of that belief undermines the benefit of the food. If you exercise but identify as damaged, the nervous system remains guarded. Healing requires permission, and permission comes from identity. Gratitude plays a powerful role in this shift, not as positive thinking, but as a physiological state that signals safety and abundance to the heart. When gratitude is felt deeply, heart rhythm becomes more coherent. Communication between the heart and brain improves, and inflammatory signals decrease. This state directly influences gene expression related to immune function and cardiovascular repair. Belief is not pretending everything is fine. Belief is choosing a new internal narrative and allowing the body to respond to it over time. The heart is exquisitely sensitive to emotional meaning, and when meaning changes, structure and function eventually follow. Many people inherit stories, not diseases. Stories repeated so often they feel biological, but stories can be rewritten, and when they are, the body updates its expectations. A person who stops saying my family always has heart problems and starts saying my family adapted to survival, but I am learning balance, sends a radically different signal to their biology. Identity also shapes how the body interprets sensations, whether a racing heart is seen as danger or excitement, whether hunger is seen as threat or transition, whether rest is seen as laziness or recovery, and these interpretations determine stress chemistry. When rest feels safe, the heart repairs. When rest feels wrong, stress continues even in stillness. Changing identity is not about denying reality, it is about choosing the lens through which reality is experienced. The heart does not need you to be perfect. It needs you to be consistent in how you see yourself. When you consistently see yourself as someone who listens to their body, the body responds by communicating more clearly. When you consistently see yourself as someone capable of change, neuroplasticity increases, and the brain creates new pathways that support healthier habits without struggle. Identity also affects how setbacks are processed, whether they reinforce shame or reinforce learning, and shame is one of the most cardiotoxic emotions there is because it keeps the nervous system locked in contraction. Releasing shame through identity change frees enormous metabolic and emotional energy that the heart can then use for healing. When someone stops identifying as a victim of genes and starts identifying as a participant in biology, empowerment replaces fear, and fear is one of the strongest drivers of heart disease. Empowerment calms the heart not because problems disappear, but because the body no longer feels alone in facing them. Identity influences posture, breathing, tone of voice, and daily micro-choices, and all of these affect cardiovascular load. A confident, grounded posture opens the chest, improves oxygenation, and reduces cardiac strain, while a collapsed posture compresses breath and signals defeat. Even these subtle signals matter over time. When identity shifts, stressors do not vanish, but the response to stress changes, recovery becomes faster, and the heart spends more time in repair than in defense. This is how belief becomes biology, not through magic, but through repeated internal states that gradually reshape the internal environment. The future heart is built from today's self-concept, and every time you choose to see yourself as capable of healing, you send instructions that ripple through hormones, nerves, blood vessels, and genes, quietly rewriting what once felt unchangeable.